to this. So now, in this letter, what's very important in Psalm 51, when he began to say, see if you can understand what I'm saying here. He says, have mercy on me, O God, according to your steadfast love, according to your abundant mercy. He said, blot out my transgression. So he's saying he's a transgressor, and he want him to blot it out, because in that state when your conscience leave you and you be Sister Gloria said all is well, and she's thanking us for our support. Wonderful. Yeah, yes, Sister Gloria, we're in Psalm 51. Psalm 51. So when he's saying, have mercy on me, God, according to your steadfast love. He's telling God, have mercy on me, which means something is going on he wants God's help with. And he says, according to your abundant mercy, he says, blot out my transgressions. So that means he still has it, and he needs something to happen, and he says, I can't do it by myself. Because his conscience is not condemning him, but it's convicting him. It's convicting him. Conviction means is showing you something that you can correct. Are you with me there? And that's the job of the conscience. And then he says, wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my what?
Sin.
From my sins. So he's saying, I need help, God, because these things, when you realize that you're in trouble, you realize that your thinking is not right. Mm-hmm. It's because of, now the problem is not the woman. She's not messing with him now. It's not the husband, because he dead and gone. The problem now is he realized, I am a transgressor now. And a transgressor is one who does not obey the rules. And you can't go to obey the rules when you get out so far. Can you see that in that text?
I remember hearing one prayer.
Mm-hmm.
One lady was praying to God. She said, Lord, please, if it's not like you, kill it in me, even if I love it. Kill it.
Mm-hmm. So the lady was asking God to help her. She needed help. She wanted God to help her. So David couldn't fix it, these things for himself, and he was asking God to do it, to have mercy on me and blot out my transgression. In verse 2, it says, wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. Who is he asking to do that? He didn't say, I'm going to cleanse my own sin. See, that's what so many people do. They think they can get right and then go to church. They can get right and then meet God. They can get right and then have a relationship with God. You need to develop a relationship with God so that he can work these things out. And so it says, wash me thoroughly from my iniquity. That's what many of us, the things that we do. And then cleanse me. Cleanse me from, he asking from my sin. He is able to acknowledge the presence before him. He was at this time in verse 3, he's able to see God's presence before him. How does verse 3 read?
For I know my transgression.
I know my transgression.
And my sin is always before me.
Oh, his sin's always before him. Once you have sinned, God acknowledges you, help you understand you have sinned. Once he helps you understand what you are doing wrong, then you can see it. Before it was just something you were doing, it was all right with you. But once this conscious thing starts to work, God begins to deal with you. God is not trying to hurt you. He's trying to get you so that you can enjoy life again. Number 4 says what?
Against you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight.
Go ahead.
So you are in your verdict and justified when you judge.
Mm-hmm. David was not talking about. Many folks think he's kind of kicking Bathsheba to the curb and kicking Uriah to the curb, like I haven't done this sinful thing. But what he's talking about, in my estimation, and as I do my reading, he realized that Bathsheba can't do anything to him. He's a king. He can, he have servants to take care of her. And the husband is dead. He can't do anything to her. But God can do something to him.
Just like the thief on the cross.
Yeah, just like the thief on the cross. Leave him alone. That's what you're talking about. Yeah. Just like the thief on the cross. So that's what he's talking about. It says, against you, how does that read?
Against you, you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight.
Go ahead.
So you are right in your verdict and justified when you judge.
And then read the next one. I want you to, I think this there what I'm looking for. Go ahead.
Surely I was sinful at birth, sinful from the time my mother conceived me.
So he was saying, what's wrong with me been in me ever since birth? Even though he was a servant of the Lord, he had not engulfed himself in the Lord. He'd never lost the holy God's presence in the Spirit. He never lost his conscience. He never dealt with his conscience to his fullest. And then we go back to that thing when Paul says in the chapter 7 in Romans, when I do want to do right, there's an evil always there with us. And he was saying before God, I was born this way. And it was sort of, he was saying, to me, he's still saying, I can't help myself, I need you.
He doesn't make it an excuse.
No, he's not making an excuse. I can't take back what I did with Bathsheba. I can't take back what I did with Uriah. But I need your help so that from this day forward, I need your help in doing the right thing. Because I have lived by my flesh, and I have walked away from you. We need to understand that David and Christ and God here, we had come in the fullness of Christ, but David and God had a special relationship. And he sent for David and raised him up when nobody thought he was anybody worthy to be raised up. And he have kept David from being killed and brought David back to the kingdom. And David is a king, and he done fixed it so David can win all these battles. And David would go before him and pray and have the prophet pray before God before he would make a move. And so and so they had this relationship, and then he slipped up and fell through the lust of the eye, through the lust of the flesh, and the lust of pride. There are so many things, not just one thing. We tend to look at the sexual thing and the murder, but there are so many things out there can draw us away from Christ, to keep us from making that step. We titled this. What was the title I gave to this?
Who's your destiny's daddy?
Who's your destiny's daddy? He had changed the father of his destiny. Christ. Oh, that's so. God had been giving him his destiny. He sent him the prophet to anoint him. He was with him with the giant Goliath. He was with him, showed him what to do, and he prepared him in the wilderness. And God himself was the father of his destiny. Destiny's dad is a colloquial term, but when you really look at it, that's what he was. God was the father of his destiny. Now David had gotten away from him, and the weight of the problem fell when God showed him, my eyes been on you all along. We might not be talking now, but I send Nathan to you to talk to you that you might be convicted and be uncomfortable where you are so that you can come back to me. Now we see right now in this how he had sense enough because he had been to church. David had been to church, was raised around the word. He had been in the, and so he knew what he needed to do to get back to God. This is something we can study and find out what to do when we have violated our relationship with God. Can y'all see that in there? When we have violated, I got kind of excited then. And
I remember God told me yesterday I was dealing with something. He said, I'd rather you suffer now than for eternity.
That's a good one. That's for sure. David is seen in the eyes of many as pushing the thought. He knows he has done what they call the high crime. That was the thought in the eyes of many. He had done this high crime. The high crime is murder and adultery, and they were called high crimes. And the result for that was being normally excommunicated. Wasn't that something? The king now has put himself in a position where he can be put out from his own kingdom. That's what excommunicated means. And so excommunicated, or they could murder him for these two sins that they did. And then Nathan, who would have nerve enough to do it, if God is not protecting him, if they think God is not protecting him, anybody in his kingdom would have nerve enough to bring this upon him.
Sound like anything happening now.
Amen. And I wonder if he would have sent for Christ then, and so that Christ could tell those folks, he who has not sinned without sin cast the first stone. That's kind of comical, but good, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then the second thing happened. David just had a conscience help him get a right view of his sins, the right view of his sin. Now he's gonna have a right view of God. He's gonna have a right view of God. And I wrote here, heretofore David had lost his conscience. At this point, I contend David is asking that that the slate be clean, that his conscience takes its place in the affairs of his soul. So what he was asking God to do, clean me up so my conscience can come back and take its place. Does that make sense to you? He's asking God to clean me up. And so he can, so that the conscience can come back and be, and takes its rightful place in the affairs of his soul. Guess what the affairs of his soul are? What life comes from the soul. This is something you already know, Cam.
Soul life.
Soul life, and soul life are your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Your conscience need to be in its proper place in your emotions. The second thing, in your mind. It needs to take its place in your mind and how you reason and do things. And the conscience needs to take its place in your will. Person have a strong will. Somebody run them 38 hot, as we say. He or she might do anything unless the conscience stop them. Unless they stop and have a little time with their conscience.
That's one of the key things that's missing today in, let's just say, the mass shooters that have blanketed our society in the last several months.
Mm-hmm.
There is no conscience.
Yeah, they have no conscience.
No conscience whatsoever. Well, my mother-in-law told me you can't re-raise anybody's children.
I can't re-raise
You can't re-raise
anybody.
nobody's children, but, however,
Uh,
if they weren't taught the value of a conscience,
mm-hmm,
or to even acknowledge a
Mhm.
conscience,
mm-hmm.
that breeds this kind of behavior.
It does.
That's my
Because,
point.
The value of a country. Go ahead.
because they value, everybody values leadership, and where you choose to put that power of leadership is on you.
Well, I don't know about it being a leadership being the goal, but certainly the absence of a conscience, the absence of anything to keep you in check, is what brings about these problems.
What was it on the American president? The dude said they'll listen to anybody who steps up to the microphone.
Right. I understand that. I
Okay,
agree
but
with that.
there's something else that needs to happen that the conscience does to ward off the power of just mere suggestion. It's good conversation. It's in verse number 6. Read 6.
My 6 says, you want me to be completely loyal, so put true wisdom deep inside of me.
Deep inside of me. He's asking God, this is something he can't do. He need God to put what?
True wisdom.
True wisdom deep inside of him. How does yours read, Cameron?
Psalm 51:6. Yet you desired faithfulness even in the womb. You taught me wisdom in that secret place.
With the conscience down in that secret place, with the conscience in our inner parts, in the inner parts, we begin to understand and receive integrity. Integrity. The Holy Spirit, the conscience, begin to work deep down in your emotions and bring integrity deep down in your will and put integrity in the things you do. It helps you. It helps you to do the right thing, even though no one is around to see you do the right thing, even though nobody is around to see you. I'm almost through here, so I want to hit a few more things and we'll be through. Now, 7 through 12 gives us a view of what David lost while he walked 9 months in darkness. 9 months in darkness, David was walking in darkness. Number 7, it says that he wanted to be purged from darkness and the stench of sin, cleansed whiter than snow. Read 7, Cameron.
Cleanse me with hyssop,
Mm-hmm.
and I will be clean.
Mm-hmm.
Wash me, and I will be whiter than snow.
So these are things. David was living in darkness as long as he was a transgressor, because that wasn't what he was anointed to do, to live the way he was living. That's not what he was raised to do. 8, I said, he had lost his joy and gladness and lost his ability to stand tall. Read number 8.
Let me hear joy and gladness. Let the bones you have crushed rejoice.
He wanted to be able to rejoice again. So these are things he's asking God to do for him. He's putting a petition before God. And number 10, I skipped 9 and went to 10. He lost a clean. He lost clean health. He lost a right spirit within him. Read 10.
Create in me a pure heart,
Create in me a pure heart,
O God, and renew a steadfast spirit.
and renew a steadfast fast spirit. So these are things that we need to pray for. These are not material things. These are things that God can do. David was asking to be elevated and promoted. He wanted to be promoted. He found out he had demoted himself.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to be promoted back to where God had brought him from him. That's what he's asking for now. He's asking for promotion. I ain't crazy about it. I mean, it's all right to get promoted out there on the job, out there among folks who want to promote you. But if I don't have all these things and integrity down in my inner parts and all, I might lose what I get again. I might make the same mistakes again. He asking God's conscience to just flow all through him. And he asking for the presence of God and the presence of the Holy Spirit. And then he's asking for gifts from heaven in number 12. Read 12 for me.
Restore to me the joy of your salvation and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me.
Oh, a willing spirit to sustain it. So he asking God to get in his spirit. He asking for, and the last thing is a right view of self. The last thing he did was a right view of self. When you have lost and God has received you and brought back the right view of sin and the right view of God, then you need a right view of self. You need a right view of self in this thing, and a right view of self. You get that's when you get a promotion. And listen to some of the things that David finally come to realize, and so you still got that verse number 13, a right view of self. When you get these things, you are promoted. This is what I'm trying to get the church to see, how faith first need to be promoted. I'm almost through, y'all, those who are bearing with me. Read.